habit is when you've done something so many times that your body literally knows how to do it better than your mind. When we're in separation, in lack, waiting for our wealth to feel abundance, we're basically living our whole life in pain. Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. If you wake up in the morning and you can't get your butt out of bed, you know what that means? It just means you can predict the feeling of everything that's going to happen in your life, and the body's resigned. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you're shifting your attention all over the board, your energy is scattered. The body is literally being depleted of energy because it's believing that it's living in an emergency situation. And in emergency, you tap all of the body's resources for some threat, whether it's real or imagined.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I watch these videos every day because I need them for motivation. Being around successful entrepreneurs every morning helps me believe that I can do great things too. It's like your morning coffee, but for your goals, kickstarting your day with a blast of positivity. So here is a challenge for you. Try watching one video every morning for the next 30 days. And let's find out together if they help you do great things too. If you're in, leave a hashtag BELIEVE in the comments below so I can celebrate with you. So today, let's get some incredible motivation from the one and only Joe Dispenza. Enjoy.
Why is it so hard to make genuine change happen in our lives? People want to change. They want to do different things. Why is it so hard?
I think the biggest difficulty in change is making a different choice. Now think about the New Year's resolutions. Everybody's very clear about what their intention is, what they want, whatever that is. But if you keep making the same choices, you're going to keep doing the same things. You're going to keep creating the same experiences. You're going to keep feeling the same emotions. And your biology and your neurocircuitry and your chemistry and your hormones and even your gene expression is going to stay the same because you're the same. But keep thinking the same way, keep acting the same way, keep feeling the same way, and do it over and over again. Those circuits in the brain ultimately become hardwired. And the emotions that are a response to someone or something, even your own thoughts, get conditioned subconsciously as a program into the body. So 95% of who we are by the middle of our life is an unconscious set of thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that are automatically programmed into our biology. So the first step to change is not thinking positively. You got to become conscious of those unconscious thoughts when you decide to make a different choice and it doesn't feel familiar. The thought that says, start tomorrow, it's too hard, just do it anyway, go ahead and make that choice, do the same thing. You're not good enough, you'll never change, you're too much like your parents, I failed last time. You have to be able to become so conscious of those unconscious thoughts that you would never go unconscious to that thought ever again, and that's change. You'd have to catch yourself, how you speak and how you act. If you want to be happy and you're blaming and you're complaining and you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're judging everyone, those behaviors are not going to make you happy. They're actually going to make you unhappy. So you got to become so conscious of those unconscious habituations that you wouldn't go unconscious and behave that way. And then, of course, you got to look at those emotions that are pretty much chemical residue from the past, and decide, does this lack, does this suffering, does this pain belong in my future? And that process of becoming so conscious that we don't go unconscious is the process of change. And how many times do we have to forget until we stop forgetting and start remembering? That's the moment of change. So the hard part about change is when you decide to make a different choice, get ready. It's going to feel uncomfortable. There's going to be uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. It's going to feel unfamiliar. So if the body has been conditioned to be the mind, then the servant is the master. So the body starts sending information back to the brain to think a certain thought so that you make the same choice, that you do the same thing, you create the same experience.
Comfortable, this is familiar.
Get back to the same feeling of suffering. That feels so much better than the uncertainty of the unknown. So going from the old self to the new self and crossing that river literally is a neurological, it's a biological, it's a chemical, it's a hormonal, it's a genetic death of the old self. That's the phoenix lighting itself on fire. And most people would rather cling to that familiar place than take a chance and possibility. That void, that vacuum actually is the perfect place to create. And we discovered this, that the brain changes the most When you get to that point where you think you can't go any further and you want to quit, if you go past that point, that is the unknown. Now, the unknown has always been wired in our biology, that the uncertainty of the unknown is always a scary place. Is that a tiger in the bushes, or is that just a shadow? So the unknown becomes a very scary place when we're living in survival. So most people never take that chance and possibility. But if a person's actually taught how to execute in the unknown and there's nothing scary there, and they can apply the same principle and say, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. So what is the voice in my head that I want to program my brain into thinking and believing? What behaviors am I going to demonstrate in my life if I'm going to not behave this way around this person or around this circumstance and I want to behave a different way? Let me rehearse in my mind, close my eyes, and get really clear on how I'm going to respond or behave in this circumstance. And the act of mental rehearsal literally grows circuits in the brain. Now your brain's looking like you've already done it. Your brain is no longer a record of the past. It's being conditioned and mapped into the future. So now you have the circuitry in place. So if you keep practicing that, the hardware becomes more automatic. It becomes more of a software program, and you start behaving that way. If the person's doing the vision board and they're saying, when I get my new car, I get my new house, I get my new relationship, then I'm going to feel so great. Well, then they're back to the program, waiting for it to happen for them to feel the emotion. They're believing their outer world has to change in order for them to feel better. There's no effect of drawing the experience to you with that way. So the person has to use those tools to get them into the emotional state for them to feel like it's already happened. Now think about this. If you get up from a creative process and you feel grateful, you feel a love for life, you feel a joy for existence, you feel a passion for the moment, you will not be looking for your future, because you'll feel like it's already happened. It's the moment that we start feeling those self-limiting emotions that we feel separation, and then we start looking for it again. Well, then, if you're waiting, you're not creating, you're in separation again. So then, whatever it takes for you to move into a state of being. And what is a state of being? Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So then if you wake up in the morning and you come back to your senses with a clean slate and you say, I don't feel anything. And you say, well, let me start thinking about all the problems in my life. Well, all those problems are connected to different people or different objects or things at different times and places. The moment you remember your problems, a memory is a record of the past. You're thinking in the past. Every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them. So all of a sudden you start feeling unhappy. You start feeling bitter. You start feeling frustrated. So now your body's in the past. So then most people then create a state of being that's connected to their past. And if they're in the familiar past, then they are going to crave the predictable future and they're going to fall back into routine. So then we want people then to get very clear on that vision of their future, however they do it, and begin to combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion. And the stronger the emotion they feel from the vision they're creating, the more altered they feel inside of them, the more they're going to pay attention to the pictures in their mind. And now they're remembering their future. And biologically, it's exactly the same as remembering your past. In fact, if you're not being defined by a vision in the future, it means you're making your past more real than your future. You're falling in love with your past. You're more in love with your past than you are with your future. That you're believing in your past more than you're believing in your future. When you get to that moment where you have that feeling, that's your compass, because that feeling is going to drive your behaviors. It's going to drive more of those thoughts. And when you feel that feeling and it's visceral, no person, no thing, no experience will stand in the way between you and that vision. And you will be initiated by the universe into wealth. You will be initiated into health. You'll be initiated into freedom. Those people, all those people that have healed themselves of all those different health conditions, they are so humble and so happy and they feel so great that they would never trade this feeling because of what you thought of them. They've left that program behind a long time ago. They actually don't care how you think of them. They actually are so happy with themselves that they're no longer dependent on anything outside of them. Now, I think that's a really important moment, because that's the moment we give people permission in our lives to do the same, right? And I think that more and more people are beginning to figure that out. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body literally knows how to do it better than your mind. Turns out, by the time we're 35 years old, we're a set of memorized programs. And so the body is functioning and the mind is unconscious. So then when there's crisis, or there's trauma, or there's disease, or diagnosis, or loss, the event sometimes causes people to feel so differently than themselves that they can finally see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. Now, that moment in neuroscience is called metacognition. This is the moment where we start paying attention to how we think. We start thinking about what we're thinking about. We start noticing how we're acting, how we're speaking. We start becoming aware of the emotions that we live by. And the moment you start observing those states of mind and body, you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing that program. And we begin to objectify our subjective self. In other words, you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. You got to get out of the jar to be able to see who you are. So most people wait for that moment where they feel so bad that they could finally begin to make an effort to change. And of course, times are changing. And my message is, why wait? Why not just start creating a future every day and begin to think differently? You begin to act differently and begin to feel differently. And if you do that enough times, that becomes the new habit. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it better than the mind. So now the person running through the same routine every single day is on autopilot, and their body's now dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past, and they've lost their free will to a set of programs, right? So now you have the familiar past and you have the predictable future. Those are knowns. So the only place then, reasonably, where the unknown exists is the sweet spot of the generous present moment. That is when the body and mind are free from those conditions. So along with those emotions that influence the same thoughts, people start becoming more judgmental. They start becoming more impatient. They start becoming more entitled. They start getting more afraid, more anxious, more depressed. And now the body is literally being depleted of energy because it's believing that it's living in an emergency situation. And in emergency, you tap all of the body's resources for some threat, whether it's real or imagined. And so then when you're releasing all of these chemicals, we are literally drawing the body's life force and turning it into chemistry. And so for the short term, that's cool. But the arousal that's created from those stress hormones is a rush of energy. And so then people use the problems and the conditions in their life to reaffirm their conditioning or their addiction to that emotion. And in a sense, they become addicted to the life they don't even like. And this is why change is so hard. So then when a person makes up their mind to change and they say, okay, I'm not going to say I can't, I'm not going to judge another person, I'm not going to blame, I'm not going to complain, I'm not going to make excuses, I'm not going to be a victim, I'm not going to talk trash about anybody, I'm just going to stop. Well, that works out really well for the first couple hours. Then the body's saying you're out of schedule. You normally at 8 in the morning, you're getting traffic and you're angry. Then at 11 o'clock, you check your emails and you're really judgmental and frustrated. And the body's saying, oh, well, you've been doing this for the last 20 years. You're just going to stop today. So now the body, which has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind, wants to return back to its familiar territory, to the known. So the body starts influencing the mind. And it says, come on. This is a good time to judge. Come on, this is a good time to suffer. It's your ex's fault. It's the government's fault. It's it's the weather, or the news, whatever it is. And if we accept, believe, and surrender to that thought without analyzing it, it slips by and it begins to program the autonomic nervous system to make those pharmacy of chemicals. And so that's when the person makes the same choice, does the same thing, creates the same experience just for that familiar feeling. Okay, I'll complain just so I can feel suffering. Then they'd rather be unhappy than step into the unknown.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight our favorite lessons from the video that will inspire you to remember what you learned today and actually apply them. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
I think that emotions are energy in motion. And so let's just say that we share the same experiences, okay? We're friends and we share the same experience. Oh, you're from London, I've been to London, my daughter lives in London, and we have, hey, you do this, I do that, you did that, you own this, I own that, So what we do is we actually look to see when we meet people if we're matching neurologically, if we're matching emotionally. So if we share the same experiences, we share the same emotions. And if we share the same emotions, we can relate to one another. So this is where it gets sticky. So then the moment you start saying, that person did that to you once. Yeah, that person, I had a similar experience. That person did that to me. Now we open the door like, I'm going to use you to reaffirm my attachment to that emotion. And let's just work it up so that you can suffer and I can suffer, and then we can have a conversation. And literally, we're sharing the same energy. And if we're sharing the same energy, we're sharing the same information. And we're bound by an invisible field of energy that keeps us connected.
Yes.
So then what does it take to break that energetic field? An energy that's greater than the energy that's holding it together. That's how you separate atoms that become a molecule. They're bound by an invisible field of energy that's keeping them connected. So you got to use a greater energy than the energy that's holding them together to separate them. Well, in order for you to change, then you can't have energy without awareness or consciousness. You got to go to a greater level of consciousness and change your energy. And nobody changes, Jay, until they change their energy. And when they change their energy, they change their life. So then you may say, well, this person, I use this person and I use my enemy to reaffirm my addiction to hatred. I use my coworker to reaffirm my addiction to judgment. I use my ex to reaffirm my addiction to resentment. That we have these different people in our lives that we need to remind us of who we think we are. The enemy dies and you find another one. Your coworker leaves and you start judging another one. It's not that. So then when there's no longer a vibrational match, when you start doing the work, there's no longer a vibrational match with you and your past, present reality, that person or that condition any longer. That person or condition is going to spiral away because you're no longer in need of that. So then our life begins to change when we change our energy and we begin to take our power back. That's essential for us to begin to create with. Now, some people can't handle that because they're not conscious that they're doing it. So they'll be working on their vision of the future, and yet they'll spend 2 hours lowering their energy back into victimization or suffering, and they want to know why their future isn't happening. Well, there's an unconscious program. Let's go after that. And once you start going after that, now all of a sudden your life starts to change again. So you can't say it doesn't work. On some level, we don't work. And if you're really invested in this, the question is, what is it about me? Where am I directing my attention or my energy? Who am I using to reaffirm some conditioning that I need to remember as my old self? So then when you stop reacting to the person, or the person's now complaining to you and you're not complaining back, it's going to be an uncomfortable moment because you're all of a sudden seeing a part of you used to be that you no longer are. And you have to be willing to not go there. And over time, that person will thank you and they'll say, I didn't even know that I was complaining that much. And by changing yourself, you help others. You think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So if you believe that your thoughts somehow are connected to your life, then the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. The same choices always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences, and the same experiences produce the same emotions. And those very same emotions drive the very same thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your neurohormones, and even your genetic expression is equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then, if you wanted to create a new personal reality, a new life, then you would have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You would have to become aware of your unconscious thoughts and observe them. You would have to pay attention to your automatic habits and behaviors and modify them. And you would have to look at the emotions you live by every single day that are connected to your past and decide if those emotions belong in your future. You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You literally have to become someone else. And then if you said, well, listen, I'm not going to wait for my healing to feel gratitude. I'm not going to wait for my new relationship to feel love. I'm going to actually teach my body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. Now, this is a big turnaround for a lot of people because we're so reliant on the outer world to change our inner world, right?
And waiting and postponing.
And waiting is not creating. I mean, period. And when people they could have the greatest intentions in the world, but if they don't combine that with an elevated emotion, there's no signal because the elevated emotion is the carrier. It's the energy that carries the thought. So then when we're in separation, in lack, waiting for our wealth to feel abundance, we're basically living our whole life in pain, right? So then if you reason this and a person can get up from their meditation and they literally feel differently and they're feeling the emotions of their future before it happens, this is turning the whole process around. They can't be looking for it. Why would they be looking for it if they felt like it already happened? Now there's no separation. Now this is when those serendipities and coincidences and opportunities begin to show up in people's lives. So it's work, but then when they start seeing the experience in their life, all of a sudden they start believing they're more of the creator of their life and less of the victim of their life.
If you could give everyone in the world an experiment to do for 30 days, one activity that they'd have to do every day for 30 days, what would it be?
I would ask them to take out a piece of paper and write down every thought that they've been thinking that's standing in the way between their future and where they are. To write down every habit or behavior, even how they speak, that stops them from becoming the person that is healthy, wealthy, or free. And then to begin to recognize the emotions that keep them in the same state of being every single day and become so conscious of those thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that they wouldn't let any of them slip by unnoticed by them. Then I would have them write down the thoughts they do want to fire and wire in their brain. I would have them write down what the behaviors look like of a great person that they wanted to become. And I would have them practice thinking about it and practice rehearsing it. And then I would say to them, what emotions would you feel when your future happened? Because you have to teach your body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. And every day, if you practice that, diligently and sincerely, and just become conscious of who you no longer want to be and keep becoming conscious of who you do want to be, you should begin to see evidence in your life. And when it comes in a way that you least expect, that surprises you and leaves no doubt that it's come from a greater mind, then you'll be inspired to do it again. And now we believe we're more the creators of our lives and less of the victims of our lives. I believe in free will. Yeah. I would never tell anybody what to believe, like politically or socially or whatever. Yeah. I want to provide them the tools and give them the free will to create life however they want and believe whatever they want. That's totally cool with me. Mm-hmm. So those people then that want to be healed and they live in fear, that fear has to be addressed. I mean, and it's not easy because it's hardwired deep in the limbic brain. It's just a safety net. It's a mechanism. So then imagine being in the unknown. The instinct in the unknown is it's a scary place. Wow, imagine not having a body. And we practice lingering without a body in an infinite space, and without a name, without a face, without a culture, without a job, without a social security number, without a disease, without a diet, just as an awareness. You practice that. You're going to be comfortable in the unknown. You're going to relax more into it. That's going against thousands of years of programming. And the people who actually overcome their fear and they trade it for gratitude, their immune system gets stronger, their genes upregulate. I mean, there's just a host of, everything changes. Their brain changes, their heart rate variability. They feel differently, and it's being measured. And some of these people, we're measuring this now in our events with reputable scientists and universities. They're shocked at what they're witnessing on a cellular level, on a brain level, on a heart level. They cannot believe the capacity of the body. I just got an email today of one of our scientists said, I ran this 3 times. The virus that we exposed the cell to in advanced meditators does not enter the cell. It's outside the cell. It won't. The virus in novice meditators, some of it's in the cell, some of it's outside. Controls all the viruses in the cell. There's an immunity. So when the person's less reactionary to their environment, there's less of response that weakens them, they're less of a victim to their environment, then they're less of a victim to their environment. Large scale, small scale, the body has a greater immunity to whatever it is. If you're alive in this world, then you haven't been experiencing the quickening. I said to someone the other day, the day where you end your day and feel complete because you finished all your work, you'll never have that. And there's always more emails and more things to check, right? So the demand has pressed us into this crazy realm of multitasking, and I think that you start shifting. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you're shifting your attention all over the board, your energy is scattered. Yeah. So then when you start disconnecting from everybody, your boss, your coworker, the news, your cell phone, your computer, and you start going this way, I think it's into the present moment. Then if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and you're truly in the present moment, you got a lot of energy to execute. You got a lot of energy to use, and you want to be able to do that eyes open.
The more scattered your energy, the less you have to focus on pushing one thing forward.
That's why people's dreams don't happen, because
too scattered.
There's no look. If you keep putting your attention on some future experience that you are imagining with your mind, your body's going to follow your mind right there, because that's where your energy is. But if you're putting your attention on everything known in your life, the shower, the coffee maker, the toilet, and your body's following your mind every day to the known. But we want your body to follow your mind to the unknown, right? Yeah. Enough people get to doing that, and you could do better in creating things in your life. That we see this. Wealthy people in our work that have focused on wealth, some of them living in the backseat of their car, some of them bankrupt that now have multi-million-dollar companies. What do you think they want to do with that money? They want to give it away.
Yeah, give back.
Let me tell you why. Not because of any other reason, is that they now know that they could create more.
Right.
Well, why, if you're abundant, why abundance to me has changed? Abundance means I have more than I need, like way more than I need. So if I have way more than I need and I know how to create it, then take it. I'll create more of it. So now you're no longer holding on in scarcity. You're making a difference. So wealthy people that have created a lot of wealth in this work, they want to give back. They want to make a difference. And I think that that's how we're innately wired. I think we're all innately wired to care for one another, to make a difference. In the living organism, our community, we heal one another. That's what we do.
Right.
We inform one another. We encourage one another. We support one another. We shine for one another, not to outshine another person, to shine to show them that they can shine, and that to me is super healthy. So then I'm applauding your success because I want you to succeed, because you're telling me that if you can do it, I can do it. So there's no longer any separation. I think that's hopeful for the world. Then you start celebrating diversity. Then you're like, wow, you're way different than me. I wanna study you because I want to bring that into who I'm becoming. Yeah, you create a strong community that way.
What are the things that disturb or disconnect our awakening and connection to the divine?
A lot of times when people, they hit that point, they try to reproduce it the same way as we talked about, and you can't. Yeah, you can't do it the same way because that's redundancy. But also, many times, we have the experience and we start to try. And because trying is matter trying to change matter, and so we're forcing, we're controlling, we're predicting, and then and when we do that, then of course we're in separation and we're waiting for the event to happen to feel the emotion, right? And I've done that long enough, and it's actually we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur, and it takes practice of surrender, right? So that's one element. I also think that our responses emotionally, like let's just say that a person gets connected to the future. They get connected to the energy of their future. They feel it. It's really great. And then they start their day, and then 2 hours later, they're feeling something else because some person or some circumstance altered their state. Well, they just disconnected from the energy of the future, and now they're back to the energy of the past. Don't expect anything to change in your life because it doesn't work that way. So then when they get back to that old self again, then they say, what's wrong with me? I failed. They didn't do it right. No, that's all the program. You show up again and you go after it again. So familiar feelings cause us to no longer see through the lens of the future. We're seeing through the lens of the past. And we color reality that way. So I think familiar emotions get in the way as well. And then, of course, there's always belief. And a belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again until you hardwire it in your brain. And all beliefs are based on past experience. So a person has an experience, the stronger the emotion they have from that circumstance, the more they pay attention to the cause, and the brain freezes a frame, takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. The moment they draw a conclusion about that experience, they'll think neurologically within those circuits, and they'll feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. Thinking and feeling, belief becomes an unconscious or subconscious state of being. Most people don't even know they have beliefs about things, about God, about relationships, about money, because it's not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
So in order to change a belief or a perception about yourself and your life, you got to go all in. It's not like you go 50% in. You got to go all in. You got to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that causes the body to respond to the mind, that the choice that you make becomes a moment in time you'll never forget. And you would say, I remember the moment I made up my mind to change. And the stronger the emotion you feel, the more you'll pay attention to the decision. And that's a huge stone you drop in the quantum field. Big splash, big waves. Your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of all the things you've learned and experienced to this moment. So if you wake up every morning and get out of bed on the same side, shut the alarm clock off with the same finger, shuffle into the bathroom and use the toilet like you always do, go and get a cup of coffee and drink coffee out of your favorite mug, then get in the shower and wash yourself off in the same routine way, drive to work, get to work, see the same people that push the same emotional buttons, do the same things that you've memorized and do so well, then hurry up and go home, and hurry up and check your emails, and hurry up and check your Facebook, and then watch your favorite television show, then hurry up and go to bed. Here's my question. Did your brain change at all that day? We could say that you were thinking the same thoughts, performing the same unconscious actions, living by the same emotions, but secretly expecting your life to change. So there's a principle in neuroscience. And the principle says, nerve cells that fire together wire together. So if you're thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, demonstrating the same behaviors, reproducing the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, and then produce the same emotions, you're going to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature. Because as you fire and wire the same circuits in the same way, those circuits begin to become more connected. And by the time you're 35 years old, this is science now, we become a set of memorized behaviors, unconscious habits, automatic emotional reactions, beliefs and perceptions, and even attitudes that function just like a computer program. And if you do something over and over and over again, the repetition of those actions over time conditions your body to know how to do it well, better than your mind. And a habit is when your body knows better than your mind, where you've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it better than the brain. And so 95% of most people's behaviors, attitudes, thoughts, beliefs, emotional reactions are subconscious programs. So why is that important? Because you're here this week to learn new information. And every time you learn something new, you make new connections in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. Physical evidence as a result of your interaction in the environment and the footprints of consciousness is called learning, making new connections. And the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learned one bit of information, they doubled the number of connections in their brain from 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. But if they didn't review that information, if they couldn't repeat it, if they couldn't remember it, those circuits pruned apart in hours or days. So if learning is making new synaptic connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. We had Bond University, a university in Australia on the Gold Coast. A senior researcher took a large majority of my brain scans. And she had them analyzed by her graduate students, and they statistically looked at everything. One of the most startling things for the research team was our community's ability to get to that point where there's nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. Now I'm talking 4 seconds. I'm talking 5 seconds. I'm talking 9 seconds. Just give me a second. I know how to do this. They've practiced it enough times. The creative moment is when you get beyond yourself, when you dissociate from everything known in your material world. Turns out when you do that and you start changing your brainwaves slow down into alpha and theta, you're suppressing the memory bank of the known self that keeps you plugged into three-dimensional reality. When you quiet down this mechanism, now all of a sudden you start connecting to that field. And when you can stay conscious in those subconscious realms, when you can literally regulate and change brainwaves, now you're in the operating system where you can make those significant changes. Self-love is no longer about pleasure or having a car. It's something that you're cultivating within you. So then imagine, we have research to show, and this is such a duality, that when you start seeing the brain start synchronizing, getting coherent, from the front of the brain and the back of the brain, the two hemispheres coming together, and we can say to scientists that come and study our work, oh, watch this, Ed's gonna pop. What do you mean? Just watch, this is gonna be good. And all of a sudden you see this brain going into this kind of psychic union, the heart blows wide open, you see coherence going on, and you'll look around at that person, and there's tears running down their face. Imagine feeling so whole that it's impossible to want. I mean, how can you want when you're whole? Because you feel like you already have it. Now, when you reach that point, that's when the magic happens, because now you are worthy to receive. And the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving.
Share this with them, please.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm curious and I'm a pragmatist. If you tell me something, all I want to know is how I'm going to use it in my life. And I'm not into dinner conversation because nobody changes from that. I'm a doer and I want to be around doers. And
this is why you and I connect so well, I think.
And obviously, you get a group of people that are passionate about transformation, and they've done some of the work. When we were doing our 4.5 day advanced workshops, right around the end of the event, I was seeing people starting to seeing some really great transformations, and I thought,
this is the pop.
Yeah, it's a pop. Big pops, and we were like, we had to send them home, and I was like, oh God, man, if I could just have them for a week. So we created these week-long events where people retreat from their lives, and they remove the constant stimulation in their external environment that reminds them of who they think they are as a personality. They separate themselves from the people they know and the places they go and the things that they do at a certain amount of time in their routine, mundane life. So we'll bridge a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, a little endocrinology, a little epigenetics, psychoneuroimmunology. Those are all sciences about possibility. And I now know that if you can give people sound scientific information, and for me, that's the language.
I know.
And then if they can turn to the person next to them and explain it, you're not going to get off the hook. If you can't explain it, it's not wired in your brain. But if you can build a model and explain it, you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain in preparation for the experience. So the more you understand what you're doing and why, the how gets easier because you can assign meaning to it. So then if I can set up the conditions and the environment and give them the proper instructions and push the envelope a little bit, and people who get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to their thoughts, they get their mind and body working together, they're going to have a new experience. And the experience then is not only going to enrich the philosophical circuits in their brain, because experience does that, but it's going to produce an emotion. So they're going to start feeling more unlimited. We've done an experiment, just 10 minutes a day, 3 times a day with 120 people, trading resentment, frustration, fear for gratitude, appreciation, and thankfulness. Measuring their immune response, the chemical immunoglobulin A, your primary defense against bacteria and viruses, the best flu shot you'll ever get, lives innately within you. Turns out when you're frustrated, when you're impatient, when you're fearful, the immune system dials down because you're in an emergency. All your energy is going for some threat in your outer world. There's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. But how do you turn that around? So then, as people begin to open their heart, can that chemical begin to elevate? 4 days, 50% change in the 120 people. Their IgA levels went up 50% in 4 days. That's your body's immune system is now upregulating genes that are making proteins and immunoglobulins and antibodies that you don't need a flu shot. In other words, your inner state is greater than your outer world. So then, just by doing that, we now know that your immune system is going to get stronger by the same means. Take 120 people or 50 people and measure 7,500 gene regulations. Okay? In 4 days, 2 genes that suppress cancer growth and tumors are activated and upregulated. The genes that stimulate stem cells to go to damaged tissues and repair them, upregulated. The gene for oxidative balance is upregulated. Anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Just your body's naturally doing this. the gene for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in response to novel experiences and learning. This is 4 days. The gene switches on. The gene for more balance in the pituitary and the pancreas, the gene for the microtubules of the cells, the little fibers that respond to energy and frequency. Right. So in 4 days, we now know that you can change your genetic destiny if you just practice the inner work.
How can people get more comfortable with stepping into the unknown, and why is it such a scary place?
The brain is a record of the past. The brain is a reflection of everything in your environment that's known to you. It's an artifact. It's a repository of everything you've learned and experienced in your life. It's a memory bank. And so people wake up in the morning and every person, every object, everything, every place, every experience that they've had in their life is mapped neurologically in their brain. So they wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is they think about those problems. And those problems are memories that are really tattooed in the recesses of their gray matter. And the moment they start remembering the problem, they start remembering the past, they're thinking in the past. Every one of those experiences or problems has an emotion associated to them. So the moment they think of the past and they start feeling unhappy or anxious, now their body's in the past. Thoughts are the language of the brain, feelings are the language of the body. Thought and feeling, an image and an emotion, a stimulus and response, and you're conditioning the body emotionally into the familiar past. And the body's so objective, as I said, doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and the one that you're imagining. The body's actually believing it's living in the environment where that problem is actually existing in the present moment. So that becomes the familiar past, and we call that the known. Then people get up and then they rush through a series of automatic routine behaviors. They're on automatic pilot because they do the same thing today as they did yesterday. And a habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. So now the person is in habituation, a program, and their body's dragging them into the same predictable future based on what they did in their past. In other words, we could take up their yesterday and set it on their tomorrow, and there's going to be a lot of predictability. So if you can predict something, then that's the known too. So the familiar past is the known, the predictable future is the known. There's only one place left where the unknown exists, and that's the sweet spot of the generous present moment. And so we teach people how to master the moment, how to master their attention. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And paying attention is being present. And you know when someone's paying attention to you because they're present with you. And you know when they're present with you because they're paying attention to you. Well, it's the exact same thing. So you're sitting with your eyes closed and you start thinking, how long is this going to go? I got a lot of things to do. Oh God, I got to think about that place I got to go to and meet that person. I got another meeting over there. And now your brain is actually defaulting and going to that predictable future. We discovered that you're not a bad meditator actually at all. This is actually how you do meditate. You become conscious that you've gone unconscious in your predictable future and you return your attention back to the present moment. That's a victory. Okay, so then your body says, hey, it's been about an hour. You usually get pretty judgmental around this time. You get in traffic, you get really angry, and you're sitting in a meditation, and all of a sudden you start feeling aroused and impatient and frustrated. And most people think, oh, well, that means I can't meditate. Well, actually, your body's used to being stimulated from something outside of itself. You settle the body back down into the present moment, and you tell it it's no longer the mind, you're the mind. Do this enough times and train the body to be in the present moment, to be in the unknown. There'll come a moment where the body is no longer the mind. The servant's no longer the master, you're the mind. And when that occurs, there's this tremendous liberation of energy that takes place in the body. The body's going from particle to wave. It's going from matter to energy. The body's being freed from the chains of the past or the predictable future. And we discover energy actually kind of moves right into a person's heart. And they start feeling really grateful to be in the present moment instead of being in the unknown and trying to predict the next moment. So it's a practice. And if you practice it on a regular basis, we discovered you can get really good at being in the unknown and going against thousands of years of programming that says the unknown is a dangerous and a scary place. There's better chances of survival If you run from the unknown, then you embrace it. So you put the person that keep relaxing into the unknown, and sooner or later they realize nothing bad is happening in the unknown, and they just start relaxing and expanding. And there's just a host of biological changes that begin to take place. So I think you can make that a skill or a habit.
Let's demystify meditation because it has so many stigmas around it. Close your eyes, retreat from your life, disconnect from your body, disconnect from your environment, disconnect from your schedule, and just give yourself an hour or 45 minutes or 20 minutes. Because when you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. And when you believe in possibilities, you believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in possibilities, then you don't believe in yourself. And you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe in possibilities. So but if you have a community, a living organism, where it's becoming the new normal, and you want to join that living organism, and you want to be a part of that, and every stride you make feeds the living organism. Every stride, every effort you make to connect is amazing, because that which we are seeking is seeking us. It's not like it matches our efforts. And so then when people have that uncompromising will, the same way that they go shopping for a dress or a pair of earrings or go to the gym and work out, with the same intensity, with the same passion, come up against themselves and just say, when the body's given everything it has, it's when you say, that's all you got? That's it? That's all you're going to put out? I'm ready. And so then when you start overcoming that, the side effect of it is that all of a sudden you're happy for no reason. And you're less seduced in believing that you need something outside of you to make you feel better. All of a sudden, you're feeling better every day without anything outside of you. And now all of a sudden, you start showing up unpredictable in your life. They're saying, that Ed guy, he's different. He's on a different medication. Something's going on with it. But in actuality, you're just freer, right? And so then as we begin to remove these layers that stop the flow of the divine in us, that in essence in us, the side effect is we become more willful, we become more mindful, we become more conscious, we become more loving. It's its nature, you know. It becomes who we are.
At the end of the day, if you really wanted to be wealthy, say, how did I do today? Did I make the right choices? Was I ethical? Was I purpose-driven? Was I interested in making a difference? Was I fair? Was I tempered? Did I really think before I spoke? What did I remember reading about that book, about that person that did it? How'd I do? And if you said, when did I fall from grace? When did I lose it? Okay, I want that opportunity again. I want another shot at that. And I'm going in this way. What would love do in this situation? What would greatness do? And now you evolve your experience, and somehow there's a door. There's an opening, something shifts, something changes. And now, here we go, we climb another ladder. And then all of a sudden, there's another challenge. And then people who finally arrive at their abundance, they could care less if they're abundant. They're already knowing that they've earned the right for it. So there's sometimes a shortcut in the process if we really learn and we really get it. But the trial and error is so important, because not only is the person earning the right to be wealthy, but they're earning the right to live in worthiness, worthy to receive. Like, hey, people come to our work all the time for a lot of reasons, and one of the common reasons is they want to get healthy. And because they're dealing with a very serious health condition. And I always say the same thing to them: stop wanting to be healthy. Learn the formula on how to get healthy. Learn the formula on how to heal, and the healing will be the side effect of it. If you're obsessing about why am I not healed, you're still the old person. You're going to become that person every day, right? Turns out that when you sit down, and the people that we interview that have had significant changes, when it's no longer about their health, but they are out of the bleachers and they're on the playing field, and they are coming up against the belief. Like one lady said, God, I always thought that this work really worked, that these concepts are the truth, but I never believed it worked for me. And I was in a car accident, I'm in a wheelchair. And then she made the decision that she was going to overcome that belief. Now, it was no longer about her healing. It was about overcoming the belief. But she overcame the belief.
And I showed up every day for herself. When you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities. When you believe in possibilities, you got to believe in yourself. You don't show up for yourself. You don't believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't do the work. I mean, if you believe that your thoughts create a reality, you would show up every day and create. And so a lot of people believe in their past more than they believe in their future. A lot of people fall in love or more in love with their past or romance their past instead of romance their future or love their future. It's that simple. So the initiation process of life is always going to be there. You're always going to be challenged. If you want to be a master, well, then you better learn how to heal someone else. And you're going to fail a lot of times. And if you think that you're a failure, then you'll quit. But if you feel like you just didn't quite ding it yet, and you show up again to just ding it, and you keep evolving your experience and go deeper. How much more can I open my heart? How much more can I surrender into this infinite field? How much more can I become? Can I walk as it with my eyes open? People do meditations, and they have great meditations, me included. And then you get up, you open your eyes, and you're back in the program. And people want to know why they haven't healed. And we have testimonies of people, they're speaking the truth. They said, my MS, my rheumatoid, and my lupus never went away. And I had great meditations. I felt better. And then I realized with my eyes open, I was still that person. And now, next level. They're in the game. They're catching themselves. They're catching how they speak. They're watching how they think. They're not letting their body fall in the same emotional state to put them in the same past experience that the body's believing in. Now, this is the great part. And when a person finally breaks through from the chains, and there's a different consciousness, a freedom that happens, they look back at their past. They want to change one thing in their past because it brought them to that present moment. That's the past no longer existing. That's the freedom. So is it worth the effort? Yeah, it's no longer about healing. It's no longer about abundance. It's about who you're becoming, right? Yeah. That's what it's about. So important then that of the infinite places you can put your attention, let's put it on your heart. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Why? Because we want this center to bloom. 1,400, 1,300 different chemicals that restore and regenerate the body. Let's breathe. Let's open this up. Let's practice this. Let's start learning how to lead with our heart, a different consciousness. Yeah, in the beginning, it's a little difficult, but you stay with it and you practice it, pedal by pedal by pedal. You're placing your attention there. You're putting your own life force back into your heart. You're turning your love inward, and the body will start responding. And in a week's time, if we're doing that 3 times a day or over and over again, sooner or later, that thing's going to start blooming. And just like when your sexual organs are aroused and they're engorged with blood, this center, when you start feeling love, you make a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called derived endothelial relaxing factor. You know what that is? It causes the arteries in your heart to literally open up. So your heart is going to be filled with blood and oxygen and nutrients. It's physiological. It's going to feel full. You're going to have a heart-on, in a sense. Your heart is going to fill, right? And when that happens, you experience a level of love that passes all understanding. Your cup runneth over. I mean, it is, and people they're sobbing because they realize that this center finally, like a child, with a community of like-minded, similar energy of people, everybody understands, they get one another. You know, communities tends to be the thing now that, in terms of our social media and the feedback we're getting, everybody wants more community because you get 1,000 people in an audience and their energy is synchronized. Now you're taking something so much bigger. We're just going to measure this. I just talked to a researcher yesterday. We're going to measure 1,000 people when they reach that synchronized moment when we know that the entire social coherence in the room is orderly. Then if you're producing a ambient coherent magnetic field in your heart and you're tuning into a thought or an intent, and you got 1,000 people doing that, and your energy is going to start interfering and commingling with the person who's next to you. When that energy starts to synchronize, it's going to produce a bigger wave. The higher the amplitude, the higher the wave, the more energy there is. So now you have one mind and one heart. And now when it comes to healing others, and we've done the research on this now, and we're collecting the data, that we're teaching people how to administer a change in energy in the person that's laying there. Because it's not matter that emits a field. That's the wrong way to think about it. It's the field that creates matter. You change the field, you change matter. It's not your job to change the tumor. The tumor is the illusion. It's the pattern in the field that has to be changed. So once people start reversing this, then you start seeing tumors disappearing. You start seeing blind people seeing, deaf people hearing. You start seeing people with Parkinson's disease switch on. I mean, you start seeing stage 4 cancer is reversing because now you're swimming upstream. You're going to the headwaters and making that change.
I think we're all faced with great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And in order, like for me personally, and after looking through your book and reading a good portion of it, I mean, for me, there's no school of ancient wisdom that you need to go to be initiated. Your life is your initiation if you're paying attention. So we meet challenges in our life from a certain level of mind, right? A certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness. And even Einstein said we have to go to a greater level of consciousness than the consciousness that's created the problem. Well, what is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness. And awareness means possibilities that you haven't thought of before. So we confront problems or challenges in our life. And as a side note, I was having breakfast with a researcher just last week who's studying what happens when we perceive and condition in our environment as a problem, how it weakens the organism. They're measuring this. And when a person sees it as a challenge, how they draw energy, they raise the energy of the body back into order. So if we said, I want to be wealthy or I want to be healthy, well, what you want to be that because you're not it. So the initiation of going from not it here to it here, you're going to have to climb some steps. And there's going to be some blind spots. So you try it out and it doesn't work. Well, that's because there's a part of you that's still in a habit. There's part of you that's still unconscious. Okay, so what is it about myself in that circumstance that I am feeling about that circumstance, and that feeling is causing me to think about it? So you say, oh, it's impossible, they'll never change. I'll hire a hitman, I'll hire the mafia, I'll hire an attorney, I'll have my friend's friend to talk to him, and nothing changes, right? Well, you're not separate from that experience. You're involved in it, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts energy into the field. So your energy is the same every day. And as long as your energy is the same, nothing's going to change in your life either. And nobody changes until they change their energy. So then, what piece of knowledge, what piece of information, what would love do? What would greatness look like? Okay, I don't know. All right, well, certainly somebody in history has faced this problem. Don't get on Facebook and say, does anybody have any answers? Go look it up and study and read and learn. You'll own it. And you'll say, wow, that person that was wealthy, they failed 500 times. Yeah. Well, hell, I had the wrong view of wealth. Okay, then failure's not a thing. I got to overcome failure. Well, yeah. Just climb the step. Yeah. Okay, I'm reacting to that circumstance with the same emotion. That emotion is firing the same thoughts. I'm broadcasting the same energy into the field. If I were facing that circumstance and situation again with that person, that circumstance, what do I learn from that circumstance? How could I do it differently the next time? Find out a solution and rehearse it. Install the circuitry so when you get in the circumstance, you're not going to respond in an automatic habituation. Yeah. Now you're at a greater level of consciousness. Now you're looking at possibilities that you weren't looking at before because you were unconscious. Now, that process of trial and error is so important in the spiritual path. How many times do we have to forget before we remember? And then we remember and we forget again. And it takes constantly remembering until we stop forgetting. And when we get to that point, now we're conscious. Now there's wisdom. And wisdom is the memory of the experience without the emotional charge. Now you're ready for the new adventure. So then people draw conclusions and say, oh, it's that person that ripped me off. It's that person that What now? You don't create your reality. Oh, you only create your reality when things are good. No, well, somehow you got to tango through this. Somehow your objectivity in not reacting emotionally is going to change the energy of how you address this situation.
If you think about this, your senses plug you into your external environment. Everything you're seeing or smelling or tasting or feeling or hearing, all of your 5 senses are affecting your brain. So if you're waking up in the morning and you're going through the same routine behaviors as you did the day before, and you're not in the process of being defined by a vision of the future, then you're for the most part left with the old hardware in your brain from the past. As a matter of fact, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know from the past. So as people wake up and they begin to pay attention to their body, they start to look around in their environment, they start to do typical things, it's the external environment that's turning on different circuits in their brain, causing them to think equal to their environment. And if you have the idea that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, as long as you're thinking equal to your environment, you keep creating the same reality over and over again. So to change is to think greater than your environment, to think greater than the circumstances in your world, to think greater than the conditions in your life. And I think every great person in history understood this. They were defined by a vision that was much bigger than them.
To me, consciousness is awareness. Awareness is paying attention and noticing. And so 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of unconscious automatic programs that we've just practiced so many times that we're not consciously thinking about those. So in order for you to change, to answer the initial question that you asked, the first step is you got to become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, and you got to start looking at those hardwired thoughts that you think every day that are just circuits that have been fired and wired together.
How do we do that? Should we write a list at the end of the day, or what are the most common thoughts we had that day? Like, how does someone become aware of
You don't have
thoughts?
to do that. You just have to sit down, close your eyes, and not move, and then you'll start seeing.
What am I thinking about right now?
Yeah, and all you want to do is observe the thought, because when you begin to observe that thought, you're no longer the program now. You're the consciousness observing the program, and you're starting to pull out of the program.
Thinking about the thinking.
Yeah, who's doing the thinking of the thinking about the thinking? That's who you are when you're not the program. That's awareness, right?
Yeah.
You got to become aware of how you speak, how you act, become so conscious, so aware of it that you won't go unconscious and let that thought or that behavior run you. You got to say, oh my God, this feeling that I've been living by for the last 20 years is actually guilt. I didn't know it was guilt because it just feels like me. And all of a sudden, as you start becoming conscious of it, you're beginning to objectify your subjective self. You're pulling out of those programs, and nobody likes to do that because it's uncomfortable. They'd rather turn on their cell phone, start texting, get on the internet, watch TV to distract them from that moment. And that is what they have to move through in order to get to their own personal freedom. So the first step is becoming conscious. And meditation means to become familiar with, to become conscious of, to become so conscious of your unconscious self that you won't go unconscious to any thought, any behavior or emotion. And get ready, because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that, and awareness to stay conscious. And so we fall from grace.
Yeah.
Fine, you're awake, you got another day, let's go again.
How often do you fall?
Oh my gosh, I mean, how many times have I done it? Thousands, but I'm not going to give up, because the moments in which I do connect, or the moments that I do have that transcendental experience, what matters the most after it, when I have that transcendental moment, I look back at all of those difficult meditations, those difficult days. And those are the ones you remember. You don't remember the good meditations. You remember the ones where you came up against yourself and you went a little further. And you said, I'm gonna go a little further, I'm gonna go a little further. Or you had a rough day and you just went in and you at the end of the day, you surrender and you have the classic, oh my God moment. There's no linear correlation. It's just whether you're willing to live in creation instead of living in survival. And so you get better at it. We just get better at it. And for me, staying conscious and staying aware and staying present is an art, because you know when someone's present with you in your life because they're paying attention to you. You know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you. So imagine this field of information,
this intelligence that lives within you and I that's governing everything material in this world. It's a self-organizing intelligence. You have access to it, so you better get present with it as well as you can get present with anything else. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
That realm you can't experience with your senses. You can only experience with your awareness. So then people have to take their attention off their bodies and go from a somebody to a nobody. Take their attention off the people in their life and go from that they identify with and go from a someone to a no one. Take their attention off the things in their life, their cell phone, their computer, their car, and go from something to nothing. Take their attention off where they sleep, where they work, where they're sitting, and go from somewhere to nowhere. Take their attention off the predictable future and the familiar past and time, and go from sometime to no time. And now if you're taking all of your attention off of everything material in this three-dimensional reality, now there's only one other thing that's left. And that means you're in awareness, your consciousness. And now that is the bridge, that is the door to the quantum field. And you can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. So if someone has spent their whole life working on having the perfect body, or so much so they have so much attention on their pain, where you place your attention is where you place your energy, it's going to take some work for them to take all of their attention off their body, right? Because they'll do it and then they'll go back, let's see if the pain's still there. Oh, the pain's still there. So it's a little bit of a waltz in the beginning, but as people start applying this, you start getting better at it.
First of all, every time we have a thought, we make a chemical. And if you have an unlimited thought, you will feel unlimited. And if you have a self-depreciating thought, you'll feel unworthy. And your brain instantaneously fires circuits that signal another part of the brain to release peptides or chemical messengers that signal hormonal centers. And when we get that arousal from the thought that we think, those thoughts sometimes weaken, the response weakens the physical body. So turns out that the emotions that are created from the thoughts are the signaling mechanisms of the body. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. So it turns out that the thoughts based in the stress hormones, based in survival, those are the thoughts that begin to push the genetic buttons that create disease. In other words, a person wakes up in the morning, and the brain is a record of the past. The first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people, certain objects, certain things at certain times and places. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, the moment you think about your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? Now, every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them because we've experienced them. So the moment you remember your problems, now you feel unhappy. Now you feel anxious. Now you feel fear. So the moment we feel those emotions, it takes a thought and a feeling, a memory or an image and an emotion, a stimulus and a response, and we start conditioning the body emotionally into the past. Now the body is so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and the emotion that person's fabricating by thought alone. The body's believing it's in that environmental condition. So if the environment signals the gene, and that's the truth, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, we're signaling the same genes, and genes make proteins. And if you keep signaling the same genes, you start down-regulating the gene to make cheaper proteins, and the body begins to break down. Now, that's an unconscious process. So what goes along with that is the moment the person feels that emotion of unhappiness or whatever it is, the brain checks in with the body and says, yeah, you're feeling pretty miserable, you're suffering. And we tend to generate more thoughts equal to the feeling that we have. And so then we get caught in this loop of thinking and feeling. So if we can't think greater than how we feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, then we're thinking in the past. We're in a convenience-based society. I mean, if you lose your internet connection or your cell phone doesn't do what it's supposed to, people get angry. Like, that's 20 seconds, right? So here you are creating something out of nothing, and you don't have the patience. Well, that has to come out, because a very, very masterful person who is abundant had to own
impatience.
Yeah.
So then never make it be about the end result. Make it be about effort. Every day you're overcoming. Every day you're out of the bleachers and you're on the field and you're giving it your all and you're practicing, keeping your energy up greater than your habits in your body or the emotional conditioning of your body, greater than any circumstance in your environment, and sustaining it for an extended period of time. And then all of a sudden, when you're connected to the energy of your future, and you know what that feels like, you will know the moment you return back to the energy of your past. And if you tell me it's because of your boss or your coworker or your ex, I'm going to say, you're back to the unconscious program that you're the victim of your life, right?
Absolutely.
So then it takes some unlearning, and the unlearning process is the most important process, because once you do that, you're clearing out room for the next creation to be easier, and the next one to be easier, because you starting to understand the formula a little better. And you start saying, I'm not going to take that personally, or I'm not going to react, or I'm not going to go back to that person again. I'm just going to self-regulate again.
Yeah.
You only need a few experiences to know that this is the truth. And then you start managing your attention, and you manage your energy a lot better. And I think that I always say, I don't care that you fall off the horse. I just care when you get back on, right? Because some people fall off and then they have to go into guilt and analysis, and they take weeks. And well, you could have just said, I fell off. Let me just get back on and keep going here. I think one of the challenges I think many people have is really the discernment of information. It's really difficult to know what's the truth anymore, just because information is so accessible. And I used to say that in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And now we have to confront a whole nother level, and that is the information that we're getting. Is it actually supporting us, or is it something that really is an incentive to cause us to make choices? So for me, I think the biggest challenge has been just really an awakening to what kind of information I want to expose myself to. And I think it's now more than ever a challenge for a lot of people in the world. I will never work in a relationship. I just won't. If I'm working in a relationship, something's wrong. I'll work on me, and I'll bring my best. You bring your best, and we get together, and we celebrate.
And it should work.
It should work. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to step back and see, what is it about me? Not you, what is it about me that I need to really look at and change? Now, if there's a vibrational match, and it flows, and it's fun, and you connect on physically, mentally, mind, body, soul, that's cool. I think that's healthy. But a mission-driven person can't be in a relationship where you have to keep going back and trying to fix something. I just won't do that. I just think that when it's right, and I'll know. Yeah. So I do think that relationships can be easy, and I do think and I think that they should be, and I think that if you're heart-centered, that's a different place you meet. Than other emotions, and again, every time I have a mystical moment, and I feel that transcendental love that I don't even know the word for, every time I have one of those moments, I think I got this all wrong. It's just that it is not chemical; it's electric. And
you got what all wrong?
Well, the way we view the world, the way we don't see things how they are, we see things how we are, and every inner experience that's transcendental, experience enriches circuitry in your brain. Experience produces emotion or energy in the body. So you start having transcendental moments where you start connecting to that field. Its signature is love. But not love like a love for your puppy. This is like an arousal. This is, I don't know the other word, but bliss.
Spiritual arousal.
And we have the evidence. We can say, oh, watch this person's brain. And scientists are studying our work. I'll say, oh, watch, she's going to pop in a few minutes. What do you mean? Just watch, she's going to pop. And all of a sudden, this person goes into an arousal. The sympathetic nervous system is so switched on, but the arousal isn't like an arousal that from the environment that produces anger or aggression or fear or anxiety or pain or suffering. That's survival in the environment that produces the arousal. This arousal is coming from energy in the body that's moving up into the brain, and the arousal is bliss. The arousal is ecstasy. The arousal is
freedom, peace.
But it's not chemical. you'll feel it in every single cell in your body. Now, here's the outcome of that. The outcome of that is that when you open your eyes and some conditioning, some layer has been removed, your spectrum of the way the world looks broadens now, because now you're wired to perceive what's always existed, but you didn't have the circuits in place to perceive them. So then it's the inner experience that literally transforms our experience of the outer world. And so when you start having moments where you hit that kind of frequency, or you have those moments of love, you're less dependent on anyone to bring you happiness. Yeah. You're okay. You can love the person for their flaws, because you can see a part of yourself you used to be that you no longer are. And instead of judgment, you have compassion, and you can encourage and communicate from a level of connection instead of intimidation or competition, or however relationships works. You got to stay conscious and not go unconscious. And it turns out that 95% of the time we're unconscious. So if you're going to stay conscious, then there's an element that also requires a certain amount of awareness or energy. And you got to step outside of that unconscious state. So the thoughts that they're thinking are slipping by their awareness unnoticed, because they're hardwired in their brain, because they've been saying, I can't, it's too hard, my life will never change, it's someone else's fault. Those thoughts have consequences in the body. So then if a person then becomes conscious of those unconscious thoughts, becomes aware of how they speak and how they act, and they notice how they're feeling, they're no longer the program. They're the consciousness outside the program, and that's the first step to change. So when you're distracted by your environment, and you got your cell phone and you're tweeting and you're Instagramming and Facebooking and whatever people do, you're distracted by that feeling. But I now know that if you take a person and you say, okay, close your eyes, sit in the silence of any external stimulation, remove the environment, sit your body down like an animal. Body is the animal. Tell it to stay. I'm going to feed you. You can check your cell phone. You can shower. You can have your coffee. But when I say, and so then here comes the challenge, right? So, and then if you say then you're not going to live in the familiar past or predictable future, you're not going to think about how long you've been meditating, what you got to do. You labor for that present moment. People think when they do this that they're doing something wrong because there's such discomfort that comes with it. But they're in the unknown. They're actually doing it right. People say, I think I'm meditating wrong. I always say, oh, no, you're doing it right. Because when you notice that your body wants to get up and check your cell phone or have a cup of coffee, and you become aware that it's on autopilot and wants to do that, and you say, come on over here, and you return it back to the present moment, you're executing a will now that's greater than the program. And if the person wants to just get angry while they're sitting there, there's an arousal, and they notice the body is amping up and revving up, and they settle it back down. Now they're telling the body it's no longer the mind, that they're the mind. Now, we've researched this, and it's tedious in the beginning at first, because David is fighting Goliath. But if you keep practicing it, just like training an animal, sooner or later, the body acquiesces. Sooner or later, the body is trained to a new mind. And when that happens, there's a liberation of energy. The body goes from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And there goes that emotion, literally liberated from the body as energy. So the person who has the strong emotion to some circumstance in their life, and they're working on lowering the volume of that emotion, the more they lower the volume of that emotion, the more they're going to take their attention off that person and problem, and they're going to take their power back. There's going to be a break in their attention from that circumstance. And now they build their own field. And now there's energy to heal. Now there's energy to create a new life. Now there's energy for the mystical moment, because they've overcome their old personality self. So I think, it's not like thinking positively. That's not the message.
No.
It's overcoming until we become somebody else. And when that occurs, and the person starts thinking differently, and they start acting differently, and they start feeling differently, they're a new personality. And they start seeing those synchronicities and serendipities. We have research to show that 60 days of meditation, 5 days a week,
will lengthen your life. The telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of your DNA, get longer. That means your biological age is changing. So we have the evidence now to show people what's possible. We have brain scans that are so outside of normal that when neuroscientists see them, they're blown away, because the amount of energy that's in the brain during this transcendental moment is hundreds of times outside of normal.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make your brain do that. Something is happening to you, and that person's having a transcendental moment. And we now know that we can predict it, and we now know that we can induce it. So then there's the evidence there. Then you take our community and you see people with stage 4 cancer, with Parkinson's disease, with myasthenia gravis, with lupus, with MS, with brain injuries, with rare genetic disorders, with vertigo, tinnitus, kidney failure, all kinds of health conditions come to a week-long event, and then at the end of that event, they make significant strides in getting beyond the emotions of the past. Now think about this. The science says that the environment signals the gene. That's epigenetics. The end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. So as long as you're living by the same emotion every single day, you're signaling the same gene in the same way. And if that gene is related to a survival emotion, a stress hormone, then you're downregulating the gene and you're creating disease. So when the person trades that emotion and really breaks free from the chains of their past, and now they're feeling an elevated emotion, well, now they're dialing down the gene for MS, and they're upregulating the gene for health and balance. And so the person, well, you'll say to them, where's the disease? Well, I'm not the same person. I'm not the, and the side effect of that is a transformation in healing. So the funny thing about it is the person who has the healing is not talking about the healing. Whether it's blind people seeing, deaf people hearing, we have crazy evidence now. What they're talking about is how amazing they feel, because they're refreshed, they got a new lease on life. And so now we have evidence in our research, and that silences the critic to show that what's possible for people. If you're sitting in a meditation and your body's throwing the kitchen sink at you and saying, Ed, you're a loser, you're never gonna change, this is too hard, why don't you quit? And you're aware that that's your body doing that, and you say to your body, we're gonna sit here, and we're gonna sit in this fire, and I'm gonna keep applying the formula, and your brain starts running to all the emails you have to do, and you become aware of that, and you return back to the present moment, and you tell the body it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind. Now your will is getting greater than that program, and there's a liberation of energy, and every time you do that, that's a victory. And you teach people.
Every time you do that, that's a victory. When your mind tells the body, I'm in charge. When
you say to your, when you want to get up and you want to quit, and you go, oh, no, that's my body, bring it back.
Okay.
And now you're taming the animal. The body is the animal, and you're like a dog, you sit. And if you keep doing this, you're climbing on top, and the body finally acquiesces. It finally says, I'm not going anywhere. And then boom, there's this liberation of energy. What's the side effect? Joy. Person's heart just automatically opens up, and every time they do that, those victories add up. There's no such thing as a bad meditation. There's only overcoming yourself. And when you sit in the fire and you work with that, people say to me, why do you meditate every morning? I say, because if I can overcome myself in the morning, the rest of my day is easy. It's easy. Not true? Because that's what it's about. You master yourself, you master your life. And so then all the chatter in your head that you listen to all day long, that is called the default mode network in the brain. Our research shows that shuts off. Not just shuts off during the meditation, it stays shut off for the rest of the day. So the critic in your head that's telling you this will never happen, you don't have enough time, there's no voice there. So you just have a clear flow on where you're going, and you trust yourself more.
What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What kind of attention and intention do you want to place so that becomes the loudest voice in your head? And if you keep practicing it, the hardware becomes a software program, and it'll say, Jay, you can do anything. Jay, you live in no time and accomplish everything. Jay, you're unlimited. You just got to hang with it. On the other side of this is greatness. Whatever you want to program in there, you get to program in there. If you sat down and say, how am I going to be with my wife, my husband, my partner? How am I going to be with my kids? How am I going to be at work with my coworkers? How am I going to be in traffic? And you close your eyes and you begin to rehearse in your mind. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real-life experience and what you're imagining. So now the brain goes from a record of the past to a map to the future. Now you're installing the hardware. Keep practicing it. It becomes automatic, it becomes easier. Now it's a software program. You may just start behaving differently. Feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences. And you can remember experiences better because you can remember how they feel. And when you're in the midst of an experience, all of your senses plug you into the environment. And as you're gathering all of this vital data from your external world, all that information rushes back to your brain, and it causes jungles of neurons to organize themselves into networks. The moment those neurons string into place, the brain makes a chemical, and that chemical is called a feeling or an emotion. And once you feel that emotion, you create a long-term memory. Now reason this with me. If feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, and you are feeling the same way every single day, doesn't that mean nothing new is happening in your life? And if those feelings and emotions drive certain thoughts, and you can't think greater than how you feel, because you had events in your life that have branded you emotionally, and you feel sadness or guilt or shame or unworthiness or insecurity, all of those emotions are created from past experiences. And when you feel those emotions, and those emotions drive certain thoughts, and then those thoughts make certain chemicals for you to feel the same emotion, and then those emotions drive certain thoughts, the repetition of that cycle then conditions the body to memorize that emotional state better than the mind. And now your body literally is in the past. Because if you can't think greater than how you feel, then you are thinking in the past. And so most people then spend the majority of their life talking about why they never arrive at their vision of the future because of some past experience. And so if feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences, you remember your first kiss, you remember your wedding, you remember the birth of your children, you remember catching a fish off the coast of Manzanillo with your 3 best friends, because you caught the fish and it was a new experience and you felt great. And then you went to the casita and you cooked the mahi-mahi and you drank Sauvignon Blanc and the wind was blowing off the sea and the sun was setting and you made a long-term memory. But you also have memories that are connected to trauma and crisis, to disappointments. And those are the memories that people remember more than anything else. And so if you haven't overcome some emotion that keeps you anchored to the past, then you tell a story about the past. And people say, I am this way because of this experience that happened to me 15 years ago. I am this way because of some event that happened 30 years ago. And from a biological perspective, it means I haven't been able to change in the last 15 or 30 years. And Scientific American, a prestigious magazine, says that 50% of what you talk about in your past isn't even the truth. You make it up. Because you don't have the same brain that you did 15 years ago or 30 years ago. So then your brain and body are typically in the past because thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So if you think insecure thoughts, in a matter of seconds, you are going to feel insecure. The moment you feel insecure, your brain is monitoring how you're feeling, and you think more insecure thoughts, which then makes you feel more insecure. And the repetition of that cycle conditions the body to become the mind of insecurity. And then the person says, I am insecure. And whenever you say, I am anything, you are commanding your mind and body into a destiny. So then how do people change? They wait for crisis, trauma, disease, diagnosis, loss. Something has to go wrong in their life where they feel so uncomfortable that they finally make up their mind to change. And why is that? Because after the trauma or the crisis, they don't feel like of themselves. And the moment they don't feel like themselves, they could actually observe themselves. Because they are looking at themselves through the eyes of someone else. But my message is, why wait? You can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration.
In order for you to really begin to explore the unknown aspect of yourself, you got to learn how to get beyond the known aspect of yourself. And if you keep coming back to the known, you're going to miss out on the unknown. So you would say, well, I don't know anything in the unknown. Of course, it's the unknown. And if you try to control it there, you're back to the known. If you try to predict it, you're back to the known. So you got to go through this trial and error of just kind of refining your attention, refining your ability. And it's just got to be something like playing tennis or playing golf or doing martial arts or working out or crocheting or dancing the salsa. You just got to keep going, man. In the beginning, it's tedious. And then when you start finding your groove, like our community, they don't miss their morning meditations. You know why? Because the magic is happening. And they know if they miss it, they're gonna cut off from the magic. So they, whether they're tired, whether they're hungover, whether they're in. You know, and if you wake up in the morning and you can't get your butt out of bed, you know what that means? It just means you can predict the feeling of everything that's going to happen in your life. And the body's resigned. The body's resigned. So then, you know, when you went on a school trip when you were a kid, you know, you woke up before your parents because you knew something new was going to happen. That's the body going, wake up. Wake up. It's something unexpected is going to happen. What happened to us, right?
Christmas Day.
So why not, you know, put in your time and then measure the effects of you at cause. I mean, become the scientist in your life and really start to experiment with it. Okay, let me change my energy. Let me just write down 4 thoughts that, like, it's too hard, I'll start tomorrow, this doesn't feel right, whatever it is. It's this person's fault. Just write those down and say, these thoughts, like Gandalf on the bridge. You may not pass today. This is the end. So then if you become conscious of those thoughts, now you're the governor of your thoughts. What actions, what behaviors do you want to change? Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you judge? Do you make excuses? How do you talk? Do you speak limited? Just pick 4 things that you're not going to do any longer. What emotions get you in trouble? What are the emotions
that you're addicted to too, right?
That you're addicted to that keep you returning back to your past. And if you don't know, close your eyes for about 30 minutes and just watch where your mind goes and watch your feelings and just say, okay, it's frustration, it's unworthiness, it's self-doubt, it's guilt, it's frustration, it's shame. Just become conscious of those and just review them in your mind so that you don't go unconscious of them in your waking day.
We have 1,000 reasons. I have more than 1,000 reasons every day to be unhappy with managing companies and staff and people, all that. But then when you rise above that and you choose just who you want to be, I think it makes a big impression on your family, first yourself, and your family and your friends and the people you work with, and then finally our communities. So I think that people are starting to figure that out there. And when they imagine oxytocin levels in our student body, the love hormone, the love chemical, 200 times outside of normal. The latest research on oxytocin is slight elevation in oxytocin. It's impossible to hold a grudge. Now, so then what that means is you feel so amazing
That why would you want to hold a grudge against that person? So forgiveness then is not something that you have to try to do to be spiritual. It's the side effect of saying, I don't want to give up this feeling for you or anybody, so I'm letting it go. I'm free in you, I'm free in myself. And my goodness, there's more liberation of energy. I call that the natural state of being. And we're knocking on that door. Why? Because as you begin to open your heart to life again, and you start trusting in your future and trusting in yourself a little bit more, and you start self-regulating with your heart, you do that properly, and you lead from that place, from that level of awareness, your life will change in dramatic ways. And why is that essential? Because when people start doing that effectively, oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called endothelial-derived relaxing factor. And that causes the arteries in your heart and lungs, Jay, to literally swell. Just like when your sexual organs are aroused and blood flow moves into them, male and female, that's a different consciousness. There's a different energy in there. Imagine the same intensity moving into your heart. That's what people are experiencing. That is a level of love. It's not like a love for your puppy. It's not like the love for your partner. This is transcendent of that. This is the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling you will ever have. It'll be distant and at the same time very close. And you'll start to see the hidden meaning behind all things. And now, when you walk in the presence of your greatest betrayer, the person who threw you under the bus, whatever it is, when you walk in from this place, there will be no emotional reaction. You will just see that person for who they are, who you used to be. Now, compassion then is no longer something that you have to try to do. It's the end product of doing the work. And I think that mystics and saints and masters of old understood this. So when they thought of that person, they didn't allow that thought to produce a feeling or an energy that would lower their energy. They understood that when they had the thought of that person, they saw their limitation. It wasn't hurting them. It was only hurting themselves. Now, I think that if the world was doing that, wow, we'd have a very different world. Here's the deal with trauma, and it's kind of an interesting thing because when you're traumatized, some threat or some danger or some condition in your outer world through your senses is changing how you feel in your inner world. And the quotient of change between the way you normally feel in some alarm state, when you change your internal state and move into that emergency mode, you narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain freezes an image and takes a snapshot, and that's called a long-term memory. And now that image is branded holographically into the brain. So then we remember experiences better because we can remember how they feel, and that memory then changes the person's biology. So they think neurologically within the circuits of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions, and how we think and feel becomes our state of being. So now the person biologically is changed, and many times it's the strong emotion that begins to select and instruct the gene that creates disease. Why? Because if the environment signals the gene, and that's a truth, that's epigenetics, and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, the emotion that you feel from that event is literally selecting the gene for you to begin to change. And the genes make proteins. And so the person, if it's strong enough, begins to wear their trauma, not just in their brain. Now it's in their body, because every time they think about that trauma, every time they review it, every time they keep creating the imagery, they keep firing and wiring the circuits in their brain, and they keep feeling the feeling emotionally in their body. And their body is so objective that it's believing it's living in the same past experience 50 to 100 times a day. And all you need is a stimulus and a response, an image and an emotion, a thought and a feeling, and you're conditioning the body into the past. Well, you're conditioning the brain and body into the past.
Why is our memory for pain stronger than our memory of a success or a joy?
I really think that when the survival gene is activated, preservation is the key. So we can have 10 things that happen really great in our lives. You have a family member or somebody you know that does this. They have 10 really great things happen in there, one thing bad, and they focus on that bad thing. Why? Because the survival gene's activated. They want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So you put your attention on it because you don't want it to happen again. So what people do when they're aroused is they start thinking it's going to happen. And so they actually select the worst case scenario in their mind and then emotionally embrace that future before it happens. And they're conditioning their body become the mind of anxiety and fear. So in preservation and in survival, if you prepare for the worst, anything less that happens, you have a better chance of surviving. So that's the mechanism that takes place. So survival means you better take care of your body.
Yeah.
You better be aware of your environment and make sure there's no threats. And so you got to keep your eye out there. And you better be thinking about the future based on what you learned in the past. Now, there's nothing wrong with that when the analytical facilities are in balance. But when there's an arousal, there's three things that create arousal: fear, hostility and anger or aggression, and pain. And that arousal drives the brain into these high states of what we call high beta. And most people need something or someone or some circumstance or some drug or some pill or some computer game to change that internal state. And the moment they notice a change in their internal state, then they pay attention to what's causing it, and they start developing a dependency on it, right? So it turns out that when we teach people how to self-regulate and change their brainwaves, we could actually see then that the incoherence, the disorderliness that's taking place in the brain, when you're over-aroused, you're overly analytical, and you're shifting your attention from one problem to one person to one thing to one place to another problem to another circumstance to your phone to your car. And each one of those elements has a neurological network in the brain. So the arousal causes these different circuits to fire out of order, and the brain is incoherent. So take two waves that are out of phase and mix them. When they interfere, they flatten out. There's no energy. So energy leaves the brain, right? So then when you're in arousal, you narrow your focus on the cause. If there's something rattling in the bushes and it's dark, you freeze and you narrow your focus on it, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and your pupils dilate and your heart starts to race, and you're ready to run, fight, or hide. I mean, that's a survival moment. But what if it's your coworker sitting right next to you or 6 feet away, and you're judging them? The same arousal's taking place. So what's once very adaptive becomes very maladaptive. And this is where it gets challenging. So when we teach people how to open their focus, we've done thousands and thousands of brain scans, and they get beyond their analytical processes, and they open their awareness and go from a convergent focus to a divergent focus, and they learn how to relax and regulate. Their brain waves start to slow down into alpha. And then if they do it properly and they're connecting, those different compartments of the brain that were once firing out of order start to unify. Different communities form bigger communities. The brain starts to synchronize. And then all of a sudden you start seeing different compartments of the brain all in resonance. So now when they're all in resonance and they start interfering, when those waves come together, there's more energy in the brain. So when a person dials down the mechanism, this neocortex that plugs us into three-dimensional reality, that keeps us aware of our body, that's the autobiographical self, where everything's stitched in memory in there. When we start deactivating the mechanism here, and we get beyond the memory bank of the known self, and brainwaves move into theta, we've studied this so much. When a person can let their body be in a light state of sleep and feel so safe that you can finally let go and surrender, the body is sleeping, but the mind is awake. And now the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open. And if they can regulate and stay there, something amazing happens. There is a release of energy from the body, and their brain goes into a very, very super coherent state of gamma. And gamma is super consciousness. Now, I'm not talking about a little gamma. I'm not talking about a lot of gamma. I'm not talking about a really lot of gamma. I'm talking about a supernatural amount of gamma. There's so much order and so much energy in the brain. Like if we were in an audience and we were all clapping like this, that could be alpha, right? Theta would be, and if everybody could do this, the slower we could do it, the more we can get our timing down, the more we can get coherent. But if we were doing this, it would be really hard for all of us to do that at the same time. So it takes a lot of order, a lot of awareness, a lot of energy to be able to create that kind of order. So that's how fast the brain is, and that arousal that's taking place is ecstasy. That arousal is bliss. It is the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling that people ever have. And that memory then that the person has that is so profoundly different than the feeling of success, the feeling of wealth, the feeling of orgasm or love or whatever. This is a new one and it's a thrill. And the person notices a dramatic change in their inner state. And with that experience comes a very lucid picture, a very profound insight, a download of information. That's the moment then the body many times rewrites the biological program. Energy is informing matter, and the autonomic nervous system is regulating. It's in high order. And remember, disease is autonomic dysregulation. Now it's getting into a very, very high frequency of order, and it's sending very coherent information to the cells and tissues, sending energy to the cells and tissues, and cells begin to emit more coherent light and information. And then there's the disease, and there it's not. How bad does it have to get? I mean, to what denominator, to what lowest level do you have to reach before people really make up their mind to change? My message is, why wait? I mean, when you're feeling so altered emotionally, you feel so bad, that's the moment you could actually see yourself for the first time, because you're not answering your cell phone, you're not responding to all your texts, you're not watching TV, you're not going out to dinners, you're not calling people back. Something's altered in you, and you're starting to become self-aware, right? So then people wait to that lowest moment where they can start to see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. Well, if you're waking up every day and you're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you're changing your emotional state to be elevated, you could still see the old self from an elevated point of view and stay conscious than from a limited point of view. And that's what I want for people. Like, let's go. I mean, what do you got to lose? What people are going to start wondering, like, did you change your medication? What's up with that guy? Something's different about him. You're not predictable any longer, right? And I always say to our community, when you're changing, you just stop talking about it. You're just too busy being it. Something's happening, and that's the repetition of getting a few days in a row of that really well. I always say, God, if you had a great meditation, you wake up feeling better at the end of that meditation than when you started, and you do that the next day, and then the next day, you're going to start feeling better all the time. And then your body's going to start feeling better, and everything's going to start feeling better, and you're going to start feeling better about life. One of the things about the global pandemic that I said to my staff and to my family the moment I heard how the circumstances in the world changed, I just said I refuse to be a victim to these circumstances. So a victim consciousness is when we allow something in our outer environment to control the way we feel and think. So if I say to you, Jay, why are you so upset today? And you said, oh, it's because of this person or circumstance. What you're really saying is something in my outer environment, some person or some condition is controlling the way I think and feel. Now, that's not the truth. That's just a response, right? So anything that controls our thoughts and feelings causes us to be victim to those things. And the stronger the emotion we feel to some circumstance in our life, the more we pay attention to it. And where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So we're giving our life force, we're giving our power away to that circumstance. And so I just made up my mind that it was a great opportunity to get into the cocoon. So you ask a person, why are you so unhappy? Why are you so frustrated? Why are you so resentful? The moment you ask that, their brain is going to associate that emotion to a past event.
To a memory.
To a memory.
Yeah.
That's because they have nothing to look forward to in their future. So if you're not being defined by a vision of the future, it just means to me that you're more in love with your past than you are with the future. So how do you teach people to believe in a future that they can't see or experience with their senses yet, but they've thought about enough times in their mind that their brain is literally changed to look like the event has already occurred? The latest research in neuroscience says that's absolutely possible. We know that. And how do you teach a person to select a new possibility in their future and begin to emotionally embrace that future before it's made manifest to such a degree that their body, as their unconscious mind, is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and they're signaling new genes and new ways ahead of the environment?
Now, till their body begins to change to look like the event has already occurred. We've proven that that's possible. Now think about this.
So the more you think about your desired future, the joy, the gratitude, the feelings you want to have that are more positive, the more you think about it as a future thing happening, the more your body shifts now.
Exactly. So your body is believing it's living in that future reality in the present moment. Now think about this. The stronger the emotion you feel from some condition in your life, the more altered you feel inside of you, the more you narrow your focus on the cause, and the brain freezes an image and takes a snapshot. And that memory now is embossed in the brain. It's branded in there. So then people think neurologically within the circuits of those past experiences, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And the stronger the betrayal, the stronger the trauma, the more the body's living in the past, right? Crazy. So how do you reverse that? So now, if you truly got passionate about a future, we've all done this. You get a wild idea in your mind and you start holding on to that vision and you're preoccupied with it. All of a sudden, the thought in your mind becomes the experience and you start feeling the energy of the future. Yeah. Now, the stronger the emotion you feel from that vision, the more you're going to pay attention to the picture in your mind, and now you're remembering your future.
And vice versa, the stronger you pay attention to the feeling of the past, pain, you're going to create the pain in this moment.
Exactly. So it requires a coherent brain, and we now know that there's a formula for that, and we've got beautiful research to show that people can do it. They just have to practice. And it requires a coherent heart, because resentment, frustration, impatience creates a very incoherent heart.
Yeah.
And when that heart becomes incoherent, you stop trusting yourself. There's no energy there. You stop trusting in your future.
Wow.
So then, if there's physical evidence in your brain and body, physical evidence to look like the event has already occurred, it's quite possible you'll be thinking neurologically within the circuits of your future, and you'll begin to feel chemically within the boundaries of that emotion of your future. And how you think and how you feel is your state of being. And now your state of being is living in the future instead of the past. Now, the moment you disconnect from the emotion of your future because of traffic or some coworker or your ex or whatever people come up with, now you're back to the energy of your past. And now you're going to start looking for it, analyzing, why hasn't it happened? Well, if you're feeling the emotion of your future, why would you look for it? Because you would feel like it already happened, and that is the place where the magic happens. So then you can't just do this, get up, and then return back to your old state of being. You got to maintain that modified state of mind and body.
When life happens?
Well, let me finish.
If I punch you in the face right now, how do you maintain?
Well, of course. I mean, we all take blows in our lives, and we all react emotionally. But the question is, how long are you going to react?
Right.
So then, if you can't mediate and regulate your emotional reactions, and those emotions linger for days, that's a
years for some people.
Mood, and then months, temperament, years, personality trait. So then the person's personality is literally based on the past. But they don't know that because they're doing it over and over again. It becomes a subconscious program. So now, if it requires a coherent brain and a coherent heart, then we have to train people how to self-regulate.
If you are not defined by some vision that is bigger than you, and you are not passionate about that vision, then you're left with the old hardware of the past in your brain, and you will be predictable in your life. So would you agree then? New thoughts, new information should lead to new choices. New choices should lead to new behaviors. And new behaviors should create new experiences. And new experiences should produce new emotions. And those new emotions should drive new thoughts. And that's called evolution. So if your brain is a record of the past, and you don't have a vision of the future, then you are living in the past. And you will never arrive at that new future. If you have been if you had experience of trauma, say, for example, and it's created the feeling of fear, and your fear is that it could happen again. And you don't know this, but every time you think about that future, that possible worst case scenario, and you feel the emotion, you're conditioning your body to become the mind subconsciously of anxiety. So now,
all you need now is some cue in your outer environment that says it's unsafe, that there's damage there, that you're a victim, something's bigger than you that could have an effect on you. Well, now that feeling of fear is going to cause you to think thoughts equal to it. So the person then no longer needs the environment to feel that fear. They just have to have the thought about that condition now. And now they're literally knocking their brain and body out of balance by thought alone. And the body's constantly living in emergency mode. And it takes a lot of energy, a lot of resources to live in emergency mode all the time. And guess what system becomes compromised by it?
Immune system.
Your immune system. Why? Because you have two protection systems. You got a system that protects you from dangers in your outer world. That's the gas pedal. That's the sympathetic nervous system. That's the fight or flight nervous system. Danger, threat out there. Use all the energy because you got to survive. And when you survive, you got to take care of your body. So So now that system can work really well short term. It doesn't work really well if you keep it on all the time. Because if you're mobilizing all that energy for some threat in your outer world, there's no energy in your inner world for growth and repair. There's no energy for long-term building projects. And energy leaves the brain and it leaves the heart and it moves into these lower centers because now you're tapping the body's resources because there is an emergency. But whether the emergency is real or imagined, whether your anger is valid or justified or not, that you're tapping the body's very energy to heal by doing this. And the immune system says, well, we're part of really the other nervous system. We're the brake. We're the clutch. We need to get into relaxation. We need to get back into balance again. And when we do, then we'll metabolize. Then we'll assimilate. We'll reproduce. We'll excrete properly. Mm-hmm. So now you got this kind of battle between the gas pedal and the brake, and the immune system says, hey, listen, if there's foreign agents, if there's viruses, bacteria, molds, funguses, listen, we don't have a whole lot of energy here to deal with them because we're fighting this war out there. There's no homeland security. So they shut down certain receptors in the immune system. They shut down function of those lymphocytes, those white blood cells that are your inner army of protection. And it takes a lot of energy to fight a virus and a bacteria. But if there's no energy, hey, listen, it takes energy to raise the body's temperature. Where do you think that comes from? That's part of that branch called the autonomic nervous system. And the sympathetic, the gas pedal, is part of it. And the parasympathetic is the clutch, is part of that autonomic nervous system. And it's a check and balance. But so you stay in emergency for an extended period of time. And now you're exposed to some antigen or some external substance, some foreign agent.
The recognition that when you're assimilating a negative thought or a negative judgment or a negative emotion, envy, greed, whatever it may be, that's actually lowering your energy.
Yeah.
And when you get to that place where you're experiencing that incredible bliss right here, you can't. Yeah. And even if you have the thought, and the thought will still come because we still have those thoughts.
But the thought will be an understanding of human nature because you're no longer at that vibrational level any longer. You're rising above it, you know? And I think more and more people are starting to figure that out. And the people in their lives are like, no, my husband is a changed person. No, he's not the same guy. I know him. I know he's completely different. And the guy's just like, yeah, I feel amazing. I feel great. And all it was sitting in the fire for a little bit of time until the body finally moved out of the past into the present moment. And so the causes of this, like I always say, you never know what you're doing today and how you're doing it, who you're going to affect tomorrow when you do this work. And that's what we're seeing. People are, they're getting promotions. They're getting all these wonderful things, not because of anything that they're doing. They're just different. And people notice that and they want those people in the position to make better decisions for the whole. And I think that's how we change the world. In our community, at least, people who have relationships that are built from our community tend to be more long-lasting because they're more self-aware. And so there's no blame, there's no excuses, there's no make wrong, there's no competition, there's none of that. There's just, this is who I am, you know? And I think that the ultimate goal is when you reach the point in your life when how you appear to the world
is who you really are. That level of transparency it takes no effort.
Right.
You can be yourself, and you know, people say to me, "Wow, you're pretty approachable," and I say, well, God, I work so hard every day on overcoming myself in the morning, overcoming my ego.
Yeah.
Why would I want to build it up the next day? Because I got to face that guy again tomorrow morning. So why not just keep, you know, taking those edges and smoothing them down so that you're less unconscious to all of those programs that are built in relationships.
You asked is it possible then that people can heal that quickly in 1 week? Yeah, because what if they create an inner event that carries an amplitude of gratitude or joy or freedom? Break through from the chains of the past. And when the body is liberated and you feel that elevated emotion, the stronger the emotion you feel from that breakthrough, the more you're going to pay attention to the image in your mind. And now you're beginning to brand new circuitry in the brain, and your body's being conditioned into a new future. And the stronger the emotion you feel, and the more you pay attention to the picture, the more you're conditioning the body over time to the future instead of the past. So now you keep knocking on that genetic door emotionally, then that emotion ultimately signals a new gene that upregulates that gene to produce better proteins. And the person then all of a sudden starts healing. And we have research to show that people can do that in 4 days, signal genes to reduce cancer cells and growth, to signal stem cells to suppress, to go to active tissues and repair them and regenerate them and suppress inflammation. You come with a lot of genes, and they're just a library of potentials. They're just a storehouse of information, of possibilities. So then you got to get the right signal, the right lock into the key that begins to select and instruct genes that cause genes to make different proteins. And you can regulate so many different genes, the same genes, you can regulate them differently. So when they upregulate, they start producing really healthy and robust proteins. And that's enzymes, that's tissue, that's structure, that's function, that's hormones. It's immunoglobulins. When they downregulate because of some alarm, when there's not a lot of energy for long-term building projects, well, then you keep doing that. Then the body starts producing cheaper proteins. It's a different signal. It's not a time for growth.
When you hit pay dirt like that, when you connect to the field, when you connect to the divine, whatever you want to call it, when your consciousness merges with a greater consciousness and that arousal creates ecstasy, bliss, oneness, whatever you want to call that, you realize that it never came from anything out there. It didn't come from the wardrobe or the facelift, the sports car or whatever. It came from within you. And so you stop looking out there for it. And now the love affair begins. And you never want to miss a date because it's just too good. So that memory then, that is what I'm after. Because when you have those transcendental moments and you understand this, the experience of that transcendental moment lays down new circuitry in the brain. That's what experience does. And the experience produces a feeling, but it's not chemical. It's electric and it's orderly, and every cell of your body is jiggling in an order. And you're aroused and you're awakened, right? You have to admit, when that occurs, your spectrum of reality is going to broaden. Some conditioning, some illusion, something is removed, and you start seeing reality as it is. And all of a sudden, you start seeing the part that we edit out for survival. Now you start seeing patterns and lights and information that are transcendent of three-dimensional reality and your spectrum. Why? Because your brain had the experience and the circuitry's there, and now your experience of the world changes. You get an upgrade to the VR set, to the virtual reality set. Oh, you got the upgrade, you got 2.0, and now it looks different. Everything looks different. Everybody looks different. The world, you're seeing beauty more. Well, and there's more holism and more connection, and sounds and words and music and sense and sight and light is all working together. That's the blessing of an awakening, right? That's where we're going.
Your body rejects viruses all the time. Of course. It has memorized certain viruses that you've been exposed to. It has memorized certain bacteria that you've been exposed to. And it's beaten those viruses. Not every virus wins in the body. The body has an intelligence, and it has quite a library of memories in the white blood cells. So your body is fighting viruses and bacteria all the time. There's a constant competition going on.
Really?
So our research shows that 4 days of opening your heart releases immunoglobulin A, your body's primary defense against bacteria and viruses. It's better than the flu shot. It's the body's natural flu shot. And that's the innate intelligence of the body saying, I got this. I got a lot of energy. In fact, I got a surplus of energy. In fact, I'm radiating energy, and now
too much energy.
Outer world. Well, now my outer world is not controlling my inner world. My inner world now is functioning independent of what's going on in my outer world. And now
you're manifesting. You're manifesting.
Now you got it. Now you're in a creative state.
People are coming to you. Yes.
Right, exactly. Now you're a magnet. Now you have a field, right? And you have energy to heal. And our research shows that that field around your body will actually expand. You radiate more light and information. Cells are getting new information that are causing light to be exchanged between cells and information. Now the body's getting an upgrade. So that immunoglobulin A in 4 days went up 50%. So now we know that if it's going up 50%, that then the immune system was getting a new signal. And nitric oxide then causes another chemical to activate the arteries in your heart to swell. And now, just like when energy moves into your sexual organs and it swells with blood and you have energy there, the same intensity, it moves into your heart. And now the heart is activated. And what do you feel? You feel an incredible amount of love. Yeah, and
love.
you feel whole. And now the more whole you feel, our research shows, then the less separate you feel from the things you want in your life, because you feel like you already have them. You only want things when you're in lack, but when you feel whole, then it feels like it's already happened. And that tends to be the exact emotion that causes those synchronicities and serendipities and coincidences to happen in our life. And you say to a person, what are you doing? And they're saying, I'm not doing anything. I'm just so
loving
happy.
Life. I'm being myself. Exactly.
I'm free. I'm free from the past. I'm free from my story of the past. In fact, I'm more connected to the energy of my future than I am to the energy of my past.
I think that if we share the same experiences, because we like the same things, we share the same emotions. And if we share the same experiences, we share the same emotions, I can relate to you, so we can exchange ideas and information.
Yeah.
And if we share the same energy, energy is information. So many people, as an example, they use each other to reaffirm their dependency on suffering. So I suffer more than you, then you say I suffer, you suffer more than me. We have this thing, we just complain with each other. Well, that's the same resonance, the same frequency, and there's a match, right? But it goes to the same means if you're someone has a accountability partner that you exchange ideas like this with, and it's a different frequency, a different energy. So when energy comes together and it's constructive, something comes out of it. You feel it, right? You feel an elevation. If there's dissonance, then your sensing meter is how you feel about that person, many times in your gut or in your heart or wherever. And there's destructive interference, and there's no energy involved. So I think that's just a practice, but really the ultimate mastery is to be able to be in such resonance, such coherence, that when you walk in the room, that you raise everybody's energy and you don't let your energy drop because of any circumstance or any condition. And that would be greater than your environment, right? And that's the model that we use. So imagine 1,500 people in an event where everybody's getting super coherent, and the interference that's going on in the room is creating these high amplitudes. Now we've measured that in the room, and the energy in the room is off the chart many times. There's energy for healing in there. There's energy for all kinds of things that can happen. So we brought it to life with our awareness. And so the more elevated the emotion, love, gratitude, freedom, bliss, ecstasy, the higher the frequency. So, but it turns out you can have a collective group of people with a lot of energy and be incoherent, and it creates entropy.
Yeah.
You could have a smaller group of people that are highly coherent and put out a very big signal. So when we see a collective really get coherent, wow, the energy in the room opens up doors of possibilities that I would never expect. I mean, I don't know how to explain some of the phenomenological things that happen. But that's everybody's divine. Like everybody's in that state. They're in that elevated state. So I think our
truth meter is really whether we feel lifted or we feel like we've been robbed. When we become the living example of truth, when we actually embody this, that there are no limits to what we can do. And I'm hopeful with human beings that we have this capacity. And of course, when we believe in ourselves, we believe in possibility. And when we believe in possibilities, we believe in ourselves. And I think that is the ultimate belief.
What do you think the world, humanity's challenge will be over the next decade as we enter 2020?
Back to the principle, Louis, of just different paradigms beginning to collapse. You know, economically, politically, socially, environmentally, religiously, education, journalism, medicine. They have to move into chaos. And chaos is just unpredictable.
Because they're not working.
Yeah, exactly. But now here's the challenge for humanity. You have one of two ways to embrace the breakdown of those paradigms. You can face them with anger and hostility and fear, and you are only contributing to more of it. We have to see that those breakdowns are essential for something greater to happen. Now, we can't wait for governments to take care of us. We can't wait for medicine to give us a drug that's going to heal us from a condition. The truth is, with a greater level of consciousness, the change in awareness because of information, the greatest challenge we have as those paradigms break down is to no longer emotionally react in the same way and be victims. You can't say, this president, this person, this whatever, is actually making me feel this way and think this way. Basically, you're in the program that something outside of you is controlling you, how you feel and how you think. So then to self-regulate then is to say how I think and feel is going to change my outer environment. So then we're all faced with great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And we are at that point, at that nexus point in our evolution as a species. So then you don't try to fix that. That's never going to work. What you do is you create something better. And then everybody just naturally just leaves that and goes here. Now, it used to be some people would just come here and the majority would stay here because they're clinging to what they've been programmed or believe in. But now, because of information, everybody's like, that's not going to work. I already know it's not going to work, and I don't care what anybody says. This is working for me. So people are moving to new applications, to new paradigms because it's working for them. So as long as we don't emotionally react to the breakdown that's happening currently in the world, and chaos is just unpredictable order, you know, as things move towards disorder, the novelty that's being created is literally chaos. Because the known and everything staying the same is order. But as you step out into that unknown, you're having the chaos is unpredictable order being expressed through novelty. And we have to be able to learn how to take that disorder and with the application of brain and heart coherence, create more order. So you can't just say, hey, I'm standing up for peace and being miserable with your coworker. You don't get to talk about peace until you're the living prayer of peace. Not just, we know crime rates go down and violence goes down when there's peace projects in communities where there's meditation on peace. But when those peace gathering projects end, you see that crime and violence and everything returns back to the same level. So it's not enough to just think it. We got to demonstrate it. So if I'm demonstrating peace and you're demonstrating peace, somebody else, because of mirror neurons, is going to go, wow, that person's unpredictable. Wow, they're different. It's given me permission to do the same. So I think that ultimately moving into that state of being, as human beings, and creating unity, that you keep watching so many programs on television that talk you into prejudice, that talk you into separation, that talk you into fear, that talk you into violence, that talk you into war, deceit, negativity. you're not going to trust anybody. In fact, you're going to see difference between you and me or anybody because that's what separation does. But when you're heart-centered and you feel connected, you don't see the person any longer, right? You see something transcendent. You see an essence, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you do that really well, that kind of emergence of a new consciousness that's less dependent on all of those outer things is really difficult to control. And if you want to control a community, control their emotions and control them in survival. Right. When you overcome your emotions, you can see the hidden meaning behind all things. And when everybody's looking this way, you may be looking that way because you understand, look, you've just overcome your fear. Yeah. You've just overcome your hostility and anger. You've overcome the program of whatever it is. I swear to you, you are going to be able to connect people. And that then is the hope of the future. Thoughts, to me, produce an electrical charge in the quantum field. And feelings produce a magnetic charge in the quantum field.
Thoughts produce a what?
An electrical charge.
Okay.
And feelings produce a magnetic charge. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out. Now think about this. And the feeling draws the event back. So you could have the intent that you want wealth, you want health, you want success. That's your intent, that's your thought. But if you're waiting for the experience to happen to feel it, then you're not drawing the experience to you because you're not feeling the emotion, right? So then teaching people once again how to balance their thoughts and feelings, because you can enter that cycle either place. Sometimes we do a meditation, we start opening our heart, we start elevating the body's energy, and then those emotions can drive certain thoughts of your future. Other times, you open your awareness, you create brain coherence, you have the vision of your future, you begin to emotionally experience it. However you want to jump on that cycle, and then sustain it, because the longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you're drawing your future to you. So then, most people spend their lives, right? We live in this realm called space-time, three-dimensional reality, and you move your body through space in three-dimensional reality, it takes time.
Yeah.
So everything, all your goals, all your dreams, all your visions, you're gonna have to get your body up and drag it through space every day to pay off that, that home that's in your future, right?
Right.
When you create from the field instead of from matter, when there's a vibrational match between your energy and some potential, and your thoughts and feelings are coherent, now you are going to begin to collapse time and space, or the experience is going to be drawn to you. Now you're the vortex to your destiny, and now you don't have to go anywhere to get it because you're not playing by the rules of three-dimensional reality. You're playing by the rules of energy and the quantum. I'm starting to realize how conditioned we are into believing how limited we are. And as you start peeling those layers away and you break through those beliefs, those self-limiting thoughts and emotions, on the other side of that is where the miraculous happens. So you got to be willing to be in that place of discomfort long enough to reorganize order and begin to create more coherence. And then all of a sudden, you get this recalibration that goes on in the brain and body. And then the extent of that is that the ultimate thing is you start to see feedback in your life, those synchronicities, those coincidences, those opportunities. You're scratching your head going,
everything is falling into place.
Yeah, I'm in the right place at the right time.
Everything I think about just comes to me.
Because your energy is synchronized. Look, I mean, when you have coherence in the brain and heart, you have a laser of energy, and it could read information much better. You're living in stress, and your brain is shifting its attention from one person to another problem, to another thing, to another place to go. Each one of those things, there's an assignment of neurological networks in the brain. So the arousal of the stress hormones drives the brain into this high frequency, and you're trying to control and predict everything in your life. And your brain circuits are firing like a lightning storm in the clouds. When your brain's incoherent, you're incoherent, and you don't have a signal. You don't have a Wi-Fi signal. You're not connected to the field. How could you connect to energy and information if your signal hasn't become orderly? So that when people synchronize their energy into coherence, they can synchronize to a possibility in the future. And the synchronicities that are feedback from the environment are just a reflection of your energy. And that's the universe saying, follow the breadcrumbs. Do it again. Follow it again. do it again. And now all of a sudden the person's not waking up in the morning like, oh, I gotta meditate now to create my future. They're kind of going like, I'm getting out of bed because I don't want the magic to end, right? They wanna sustain that state so that the old reality that they've lived in begins to transform into something new, and because there's no longer a vibrational match with everyone and everything in their past, present reality, there's a vibrational match to their future, and now their future is starting to give them signals.
For some incredible Bruce Lipton motivation, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
When people awake to this, that's when they come, I can't remember the name of that other population that you just mentioned. But the moment you're awake, all of a sudden it's, well, wait a minute, I can change the program and go, that's the game. That's the